On a freezing morning in Milwaukee, a former Navy SEAL named Ethan Walker hears a faint cry near the river and finds an old man trapped in an icy drainage cut, slipping closer to hypothermia by the second. Ethan's phone has no signal, the ice is too thin to climb down, and time is running out. So Ethan gives one command to his service dog, Ranger, and watches Ranger sprint into the snowstorm to find help. Minutes later, sirens scream across the city, but not toward the river. A viral video explodes instead. A dog stole an emergency truck. Ranger is seized, Ethan is handcuffed, and the real rescue is buried under a lie. With the man's life hanging in the balance and a crowd demanding punishment, Ethan has one last chance to prove what Ranger really did. If you want the full truth, share this story. Comment what you think happened, and subscribe for more. The river that swallowed Sound Lake. Wind pressed Milwaukee flat under a lid of gray sky. Snow drifted in slow, dry sheets, and the river carried a thin skin of ice that looked solid until it didn't. Ethan Walker kept to the river walk where the footing was clearer, one hand tucked into the pocket of his navy winter coat. The other held a short leash, not tight, not loose, just steady. He moved with a subtle stiffness in his left leg, the kind a man learns to hide when he is tired of people asking questions. He looked like what he was, a white American in his 40s, tall and broad-shouldered, built hard and worn down at the edges. His face was angular, jaw squared, nose straight, forehead slightly high. A trimmed beard framed his mouth, and a few silver threads sat at his temples, like old dust that never fully washed out. His dark brown eyes were warm when they could be, sharp when they had to be. Under the open edge of his coat, the red and black flannel showed in neat blocks. Faded jeans, brown low-cut leather boots. Always the same. Clothing was one fewer decision in a life that already had too many. Beside him walked Ranger, 5 years old, black and tan German shepherd, ears upright, amber brown eyes scanning everything without drama. A simple black service dog vest lay across Ranger's shoulders, the white patch on the side plain and blunt. Service dog. Do not pet. People saw the sign and understood the rule, most days. Ranger did not pull toward strangers. Ranger did not bark for attention. Ranger watched. Ranger waited. And when Ethan stopped, Ranger stopped, as if the two of them shared a private language made of breath and timing. Ethan liked it that way. The city had given him work that did not require much talking. Night shifts near the docks, quiet hours, a paycheck that arrived on time. Milwaukee didn't ask him to be inspiring. It didn't ask him to be a hero. It mostly let him pass through like a shadow with a limp. That was the deal he wanted. They turned a corner and passed a small toy shop, the kind that felt stubbornly old-fashioned, with a bell on the door and a foggy window warmed by yellow light. In the front display sat a bright red toy fire truck, polished plastic, shiny ladder, little silver wheels that looked too clean for winter. Ranger's eyes lingered on it, not greed, not playfulness, something else, a quiet focus. Ethan felt the familiar squeeze in his chest, the one that came when the world offered a small kindness and he didn't know if he deserved to take it. Not today, he murmured, more to himself than to the dog. Just a short walk home. Ranger looked up once, then forward again, obeying without argument. Ethan admired that. He trusted Ranger because Ranger didn't perform emotions. Ranger simply did the job in front of him. They moved on, boots and paws crunching softly through salted snow. The river to their left was mostly silence, broken only by the occasional clink of ice against concrete. The air smelled like metal and cold water. Then Ranger's ears shifted. Ethan didn't hear anything at first. He had learned, in other places and other years, that the body could ignore sounds it didn't want to believe. His mind tried to keep walking. A normal man's mind would. But Ranger's head angled toward the river, still and alert, like a compass finding north. A sound reached Ethan, thin as thread. "Help! Somebody!" It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of voice that died in the wind because the person speaking it didn't have enough strength left to push harder. Ethan stopped so fast his left knee flared with pain. He swallowed the reflex, breathed through it, and looked around. No one on the path. A couple in the distance. A cyclist far behind. No obvious struggle. No waving arms. No scene. Ranger moved first, a controlled trot toward a section of railing where the snow had piled unevenly, as if something had slid through it. Ethan followed, careful, reading the ground the way he used to read terrain. He didn't need to think about it. His body still remembered. Ranger stopped at the edge and looked down. Ethan stepped closer and felt his stomach drop. A man lay wedged in a narrow drainage cut beside the river, half on his side, half twisted awkwardly, one leg trapped lower than the other. He was older, late 60s maybe, with thinning gray hair mashed under a knit cap. His face was pale and waxy, lips tinged blue. Frost clung to the ends of his eyebrows and the folds of his scarf. One gloved hand was raised, trembling, as if the act of lifting it cost him everything. His eyes found Ethan with the raw honesty of fear. "Please," the man said. "I slipped. I can't get out." Ethan dropped to a crouch, ignoring the bite in his knee. He kept his weight back from the edge. The ice there looked wrong. Too smooth. Too confident. "Don't move," Ethan said, voice low and firm. He kept it calm on purpose. Panic was contagious. "I've got you." The man tried to nod, then winced, jaw tightening like he was holding back a cry. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Frank," the man rasped. "Frank Delaney." Frank had the look of someone who lived alone, or lived like it even when he didn't. He wasn't dramatic. He wasn't asking for pity. He was asking for time. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. His fingers were colder than he expected, clumsy for a second. He hit 911. No connection. He tried again, angling the phone toward the sky like that could coax a signal through winter. Nothing. Ethan's pulse stayed steady, but inside, something tightened. This was the part he hated. Not danger, not pain. The helpless delay between needing help and getting it. He looked down at Frank, then back at the path. He could not climb down safely without risking the thin ice giving way. He could not lift Frank by himself at this angle. He needed more hands, more rope, a plan. Ranger stood inches from the edge, perfectly balanced, not stepping onto the slickest patch. Amber eyes flicked from Frank to Ethan, then to the river, then back again. Ranger didn't whine. Ranger didn't bark. Ranger waited for instruction. Ethan felt his throat burn with something close to gratitude and something close to guilt. A service dog wasn't just trained obedience. It was trust made practical. He leaned close to Ranger, keeping his voice quiet, as if the world might shatter if he said it too loud. "Ranger," Ethan said, "go get help." Ranger's ears pricked higher. One beat of stillness. Then Ranger turned and ran, fast and purposeful, paws biting into the snow with controlled speed. Frank watched him go, eyes wide. Is he really going to? Yes, Ethan said. He's better at this than most people. Frank gave a weak, shaky laugh that turned into a cough. His chest tightened. He blinked hard, and for a second, Ethan thought he might pass out. Ethan pulled off one glove and wrapped his bare hand over Frank's raised wrist, firm enough to anchor him, gentle enough not to hurt. Stay with me, Ethan said. Look at me, Frank. Frank's gaze locked onto Ethan's face, clinging to it like a rope. I'm sorry, Frank whispered, voice breaking. I didn't mean to. I didn't think. Don't waste breath apologizing, Ethan replied. Tell me if you can feel your toes. Frank swallowed. Barely. Okay. Keep talking. Tell me about your day. Anything. Frank's eyes glistened, tears freezing at the corners. I was just walking. I come here every week. Ethan nodded, listening, measuring Frank's breathing, watching the color in his lips like it was a countdown clock. Behind them, the river stayed quiet. The city kept moving, and Ethan held his place at the edge of the ice, waiting for the sound of help that might arrive too late if Ranger didn't make it back in time. The truck that moved. Snow tightened into sharper grains as the wind turned, scraping Milwaukee's streets clean and loud. The river stayed muted, but the city's corners carried sound like metal. Ethan Walker stayed at the edge of the drainage cut, one knee close to the ground, one boot planted wide for balance. The navy winter coat did little against the cold that rose from the water. His red and black flannel showed at the collar when he leaned forward, and his left knee throbbed in a steady pulse that tried to pull him away from the moment. He refused. Frank Delaney's breathing came in short bursts. His face had the washed-out look of a man whose body was losing the argument with winter. Talk to me, Ethan said, voice controlled, warm only because he forced it to be. Keep your eyes open. Frank's lips moved like they were stuck to the air. Your dog, he went for help. Yes, Ethan answered. He's coming back with it. Ethan watched the empty path the way a man watches a door in a fire. He had given Ranger one instruction, and Ranger had left like a promise. And Ranger did not break promises. Ranger ran through Milwaukee with the kind of focus that looked almost quiet. 5 years old, black and tan German shepherd, ears upright, amber-brown eyes fixed ahead, Ranger did not waste energy on fear. Ranger moved as if every footfall was chosen. People on the sidewalk noticed the dog's purpose and stepped aside without understanding why. A woman in a puffy coat turned her head and frowned, then shrugged. A teenager glanced up from a phone, saw the dog's straight-line urgency, and instinctively moved out of the way. Ranger cut past a bus stop and onto a side street where the air smelled of diesel and wet salt. The streetlights threw pale halos on the snow, and tires hissed over slush. Ranger did not look back. Ranger followed the nearest place that meant help. A fire station sat on the corner, like a block of stubborn brick, American flag stiff in the wind. The bay door was open just enough to spill warm yellow light onto the snow. Inside, a compact emergency response truck sat angled in its spot, as if ready to launch. Ranger crossed the apron and slowed at the threshold, not from doubt, but from training. Ranger's head turned once, checking for danger, checking for humans. 2 firefighters were inside. One of them, Kyle Bennett, looked up first. Kyle was in his early 30s, tall and solid, with close-cropped hair and a tired crease between his brows. He moved like someone who had sprinted into trouble enough times to stop flinching at the thought. His expression shifted from surprise to quick assessment. "Hey," Kyle called, not harsh, just firm. "Buddy, you lost?" The other firefighter, older and heavier through the shoulders, was Marcus Reed. Marcus had a graying beard and calm eyes that suggested patience was his main tool. He watched Ranger with a slower kind of caution, the kind that comes from years of seeing how fast a situation can flip. Ranger did not approach them directly. Ranger jumped up, front paws landing on the edge of the driver's seat. Kyle took a step forward. "No, no, get down!" Ranger's paw hit the horn. The sound cracked through the bay, sharp and wrong. Kyle froze. Marcus lifted a hand like he was quieting a child. "Hold up." Ranger hit the horn again, then again. A pattern, urgent, insistent, not playful. The noise drew attention outside. A man walking past the station stopped and stared. He had a knit cap pulled low and a phone already in hand. The kind of person who recorded first and thought later. His name was Jason Miller. Mid-20s, thin, cheeks pink from cold, eyes bright with the thrill of a story. Jason's mouth fell open as he pointed his camera toward the bay. "No way," Jason muttered. "That's a dog in the truck." Kyle moved closer to the door, eyes scanning Ranger's posture. Ranger held still between horn presses, head angled toward the street, then back toward the firefighters. It was not random. It was asking to be followed. Marcus took a step back and glanced down at the truck's tires. "Is the brake set?" Kyle frowned, then looked down at the lever. He swore under his breath. Before he could reach it, the truck rolled. Not fast, not dramatic, just a slow glide of a few feet as gravity did what it always did to something unbraced. Jason's voice rose. "Yo, the truck is moving! The dog is driving it!" His phone caught the moment at the worst angle. The moving truck, the dog in the driver's space. The story wrote itself without the truth's permission. Jason stepped into the street, half laughing, half scared. "This is insane. I'm calling it in." Kyle shouted, "Sir, step back!" Jason was already dialing. "My truck just moved on its own," he said too loudly, because people believed loudness. "There's a dog inside. I need help right now." Marcus moved toward the truck with his hands out, calm, steady. "Easy, easy. Nobody chase him." Ranger stopped pressing the horn and turned his head. He looked at Marcus, then out toward the river direction again. His ears stayed upright. His body stayed balanced. Ranger was not fleeing. Ranger was waiting for someone to finally understand. But understanding is slow, and procedure is fast. A police cruiser arrived within minutes, lights painting the snow with harsh color. The cold made the siren sound sharper, like it had teeth. Officer Nina Caldwell stepped out with her posture already set. Nina was 29, lean and athletic, hair pulled back under her cap. Her face was clean and serious, and her eyes had the practiced focus of someone who trusted rules, because rules kept people alive. She saw the truck's position. She saw the crowd. She saw Ranger in the driver's space. And she reached the wrong conclusion before anyone could offer the right one. "Everybody back!" Nina called. Her voice carried. "Clear the area!" Kyle lifted both hands. "Officer, wait. The dog came in here and started hitting the horn. We think he was trying to alert us." Jason cut in, excited and certain. "The truck moved, with the dog in it. I got video." Nina's gaze flicked to Jason's phone, then back to Ranger. "Animals can cause accidents," she said, more to herself than to them. "We secure it first." Ranger jumped down from the seat and stood on the bay floor, perfectly still, eyes fixed on Nina. Not fearful, not aggressive, just alert. Nina read that stillness as defiance. "He might bolt," she warned. "Do not approach." Ranger took one step toward the station entrance, then stopped and looked back, like a guide refusing to leave without followers. Kyle's face tightened. Marcus spoke softly. "He wants us to go somewhere." Nina did not hear it the way they did. Nina heard only risk. Nina heard headlines. Nina heard what could go wrong if she was wrong. "Contain the dog," she ordered. Someone brought a control pole and a blanket. The metal clinked against the concrete. Ranger's ears twitched, but he did not fight. He did not snarl. He did not bark. Ranger only looked toward the street one last time, as if listening for a voice that was not here. Back at the river, Ethan held Frank's wrist and stared down the path, waiting for the sound of boots that meant help. Instead, far away, he heard sirens. They were moving, but not toward him. Not yet. And Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest, the familiar one that arrived when the world turned a rescue into a mistake. The man they thought was the problem. Wind pushed harder off the lake, turning snow into stinging needles. Sirens cut through the gray like bright seams, but the sound kept slipping past Ethan, as if help could not find the right place. Ethan Walker stayed crouched at the edge of the drainage cut, navy coat pulled tight, red and black flannel visible at his throat. His faded jeans were damp at the knee. His brown boots were planted wide for balance. The ache in his left knee had become a hot, steady burn, but he treated it like background noise, the way he had learned to do long ago. Frank Delaney's face looked worse in the weak daylight. His lips were pale. His fingers trembled even when Ethan held them. "Keep talking," Ethan said. "You're doing good." Frank tried to smile. It came out crooked. "Your dog. He really went." "He went," Ethan said. "He'll bring them." Ethan listened for footsteps, for voices, for anything that meant the city had finally understood. Then the siren grew louder, close enough to raise the hairs on Ethan's arms. A rescue truck rolled up near the Riverwalk, tires crunching over salted snow. 2 firefighters climbed out fast, and behind them an EMT jumped down, already pulling gloves tight. The EMT was Lena Park, early 30s, Korean-American, slim but quick, hair tucked under a knit cap, eyes sharp in the cold. Her movements were calm and practiced, the kind of calm that didn't waste time on panic. She took one look at the drainage cut and didn't flinch. "Frank?" she called down, voice steady. "Can you hear me?" Frank's breath hitched. Yeah. Good," Lena said. "Stay with me. We're going to get you out." One firefighter was Marcus Reed. The older one Ethan had not met, but could read instantly. Broad shoulders, graying beard, a steady face that had seen too many winters. The other was Kyle Bennett, younger, close-cropped hair, a restless urgency in the way he scanned the ground. Ethan recognized them from the way they worked. One anchored the scene, one drove it forward. Kyle looked at the ice near Frank. "Edge is thin," he muttered. Marcus nodded once. "We go slow. We go smart." Ethan's mind clicked into an old rhythm. Position, weight, angles, timing. He hated that his body still knew this so well. He hated that it felt like coming home. Lena glanced up at Ethan. "You the one who called?" "I tried," Ethan said. "Signal dropped." Kyle tossed down a rope. "We've got you now." They worked in clean steps. Marcus secured an anchor point. Kyle lowered the rope and a strap. Lena talked Frank through breathing, through moving one arm, through not twisting his trapped leg. Ethan stayed close, one hand still around Frank's wrist, the other ready to steady him if the ice shifted. Ethan's left knee threatened to buckle when he leaned, but he kept his weight back, refusing to become another problem they had to solve. Frank was pulled up, inch by inch. When his shoulders cleared the edge, Frank made a sound that was half sob, half cough. Lena caught him, wrapped him in a thermal blanket, and checked his pulse with hands that did not shake. "Hypothermia risk," Lena said. "We need heat in him now." Frank looked at Ethan with watery eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "And your dog. Don't let them." Ethan's throat tightened. He couldn't answer yet. Not when Ranger was still out there, still caught in the gears of someone else's misunderstanding. A police cruiser rolled in before the rescue truck had even finished packing up. The lights washed the snow in harsh blue and red, turning everyone's faces into flickering masks. Officer Nina Caldwell stepped out, posture rigid, eyes locked onto Ethan before she even reached the group. She looked the same as she had at the station, except now her certainty had teeth. "You," she said, pointing. "Are you the owner of the German Shepherd?" Ethan rose slowly. His knee flared as he stood. He didn't let it show. "Yes," he said. "That's Ranger. He's my service dog." Nina's gaze flicked over Ethan's coat, his flannel, his boots, then back to his face like she was weighing a story she didn't want to believe. "We received a report," Nina said. "A dog was inside an emergency response vehicle. The vehicle moved. That is a serious incident." Kyle stepped forward, palms out. "Officer, he wasn't causing damage. He was hitting the horn. We thought he was trying to get our attention." A few people had gathered now, a couple from the path, a man with a phone held up like a shield, a woman with a scarf pulled high, eyes wide and eager. Ethan could feel the shape of the story forming in their minds before anyone spoke. A dog in a truck, a viral clip, a clean villain. Nina's chin lifted. "Where is the dog now?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "You have him." Nina didn't deny it. "He's being held for safety and investigation." Ethan's hands curled inside his coat pockets, fists hidden. He kept his voice low because he knew what loudness did. Loudness turned a man into a threat. "He saved a man," Ethan said, nodding toward Frank on the stretcher. "I told him to get help. He did." Nina's eyes narrowed. "You want me to believe a dog made the decision to enter a vehicle and activate it?" "I want you to believe what actually happened," Ethan replied. "He used the horn to alert people. The truck moved because someone didn't secure it." The man with the phone stepped closer. "I've got video," he announced, almost proud. "The truck moved with the dog in it." Frank lifted his head from the stretcher with effort. His voice was weak but fierce. "That dog helped me," he said. "He didn't hurt anyone." Lena looked from Frank to Nina, a question in her eyes. Marcus's face tightened, like he didn't like where this was going. Nina hesitated for half a second. Ethan saw it, the smallest crack. Then procedure filled it like ice filling a gap. "Sir," Nina said to Ethan, "you need to step back while we handle this." Ethan took one slow step forward instead, not aggressive, just unwilling to be dismissed. "Don't make him the villain," he said. "Not when he's the reason Frank is alive." Nina's voice sharpened. "If you interfere, you will be detained." Ethan felt something old move inside him. A memory of being ordered to stand down while something wrong happened. A memory of watching power pretend it was fairness. He kept his tone even. "You're doing it again," he said. "You're deciding first and checking later." Nina's shoulders stiffened. "Step back." Ethan didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He simply didn't retreat. Nina nodded to her partner. "Cuff him. Now." Metal closed around Ethan's wrists. Cold bit into skin. The click sounded final in a way that made the onlookers inhale, like they'd been waiting for a climax. Ethan's face stayed calm. Inside, anger rose, not hot, but heavy. He hated injustice more than he hated pain. He hated being made into a problem when he was trying to prevent one. On the stretcher, Frank tried to sit up. "Stop," he rasped. "He saved me. The dog saved me." No one listened long enough. Ethan turned his head, scanning the street as if he could will Ranger into view. He pictured Ranger's amber eyes, the black vest, the plain words that kept strangers away. "Service dog. Do not pet." A sign meant to protect. A sign that had failed to protect the one wearing it. The cruiser door opened. Somewhere, far from the river, Ethan knew Ranger was being held in a place full of fluorescent light and hard rules, surrounded by people who couldn't hear what Ranger had been trying to say. Ethan took a breath through his nose and let it out slow. Because if he broke now, they would call it proof. And Ethan refused to give them that. The footage that would not lie. Overnight, Milwaukee's cold turned brittle, the kind that makes even streetlights look sharp. Snow didn't fall in soft flakes anymore. It came as dry dust, drifting across sidewalks like ash. Ethan Walker walked out of the station with his wrists free but his chest still tight. The navy winter coat hung heavy on his shoulders. The red and black flannel showed at the collar, stubborn as a flag. Faded jeans, brown boots. He kept the same uniform because changing it felt like admitting the world could change him too. The air outside smelled like exhaust and old snow. Every breath scratched. He wasn't alone. Tom Harris waited by the curb, hands in his pockets, shoulders squared against the wind. Tom was 43, broad through the back, hair cut short, face lined in a way that suggested he didn't waste time explaining himself. His eyes flicked over Ethan once, checking for damage. "You good?" Tom asked. Ethan nodded. "I'm upright." Tom's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "That's not the same thing." Ethan didn't answer. If he tried, anger would spill out, and he couldn't afford to spill. Anger was what people filmed. Anger was what they labeled. Anger was how a man became the story instead of the truth. They drove through the city with the heater fighting a losing battle. Ethan watched Milwaukee slide past like a documentary he didn't want to be in. Storefronts, bridges, the dull ribbon of the river. At every red light, Ethan's mind went to one image. Ranger. A black and tan shape behind a gate. Amber eyes. The service dog vest with its blunt patch. Service dog, do not pet. A sign that kept hands away, but couldn't keep wrong decisions away. By morning, the clip had already spread. Tom didn't need to show Ethan. Ethan could feel it in the way people stared when they saw him step out of the truck near the station. Phones came up like flowers turning toward light. "A dog stole a rescue truck," someone said, half excited, half outraged. Ethan kept his gaze forward. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He walked in, steady, as if the building belonged to truth and he was here to collect it. Inside, fluorescent light flattened everything. The lobby smelled like coffee and disinfectant. A few officers glanced up. Some looked curious. Some looked annoyed. Ethan could read it the way he read terrain. Then he saw her. Mia Thompson sat behind a desk near the back, wearing a simple sweater under a dark office jacket, a lanyard around her neck. She was mid-30s, small in frame, hair pulled back, eyes quick and thoughtful. She had the look of someone who noticed details, because details was safer than assumptions. She stood as Ethan approached, cautious but not afraid. "Mr. Walker?" she asked quietly. Ethan nodded. "I need my dog." Mia's gaze softened. "I heard the call. I listened to the log. Something about it didn't line up." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Everyone keeps saying it didn't line up after they already cuffed me." Mia flinched at that, not offended, just honest about what it meant. "I know, I'm sorry." Tom leaned in slightly, voice low. "What do you have?" Mia glanced toward a hallway, then back. "I can't make decisions, but I can point to facts." That word, facts, landed in Ethan like a hand on a shoulder. It didn't fix anything, but it stopped him from falling deeper into rage. Mia continued. "The report says the dog took control of a vehicle, but the vehicle never went anywhere significant. No crash, no pursuit. Just a roll." Ethan's eyes narrowed. Because it wasn't taken, it drifted. Mia nodded once, quick. "That's what I think. And the camera coverage around the fire station is good. City traffic cams, too. We can check." A voice cut in from behind. Officer Nina Caldwell approached, uniform crisp, shoulders tense. Her face looked the same as last night, but her eyes had changed. The certainty was still there, but now it had something underneath it. Doubt, maybe, or discomfort. "You're back," Nina said. Ethan kept his tone even. "I never left." Nina's jaw worked. "We're still processing the incident." Tom stepped forward, calm and solid. "Then process it right." Nina's gaze flicked to Mia. "What are you doing?" Mia lifted her chin. "Trying to prevent another mistake." That landed harder than a shout, because it implied the first mistake had already been made. Nina looked away for a second. Ethan noticed. It was a small movement, but Ethan had built a life on noticing small movements. Then Captain Robert Lang entered the lobby. He was in his early 50s, tall enough to fill the doorway without trying. Gray threaded through his hair. His face was serious, not cruel. The kind of serious that came from carrying consequences like weight. His eyes moved across the room and landed on Ethan with a measured pause. "Walker," Captain Lang said. Not friendly, not hostile, just direct. Ethan nodded. "Captain." Lang looked at Nina. "Brief me." Nina started, crisp. "Dog entered emergency vehicle. Vehicle moved. Public safety risk. Owner interfered." Ethan felt the old anger flare again, but he stayed quiet. Not because he agreed, because he wanted the room to see what Nina couldn't yet. Mia stepped in gently. "Captain, may I show you the footage before we lock in that narrative?" Lang's gaze sharpened. "You have footage?" "Not yet," Mia said, "but we can pull it. Fire station cameras, plus a city traffic angle on the corner." Lang didn't hesitate. Pull it. They moved into a small room with monitors and chairs that squeaked under weight. The screen glowed in the dimness. Ethan stood behind Tom, hands at his sides, trying not to look like a man pleading. He was done pleading. Mia typed fast, fingers sure. A video feed loaded. First angle, Riverwalk. The camera showed Ethan and Ranger on the path. It caught the moment Ranger's ears shifted. It caught Ethan leaning over the railing. It caught Frank's trapped hand. The camera didn't hear Frank's voice clearly, but it saw enough to make truth visible. Ethan watched himself on screen and felt something strange. A quiet grief. Because from the outside, he looked calmer than he felt. From the outside, it looked simple. It never felt simple when a life depended on timing. Mia switched feeds. Second angle, Fire Station Bay. Ranger ran in, service dog vest clear in the light, the patch readable even from a distance. Ranger jumped into the driver's seat and pressed the horn. Once, twice, again. Ranger didn't paw at the steering wheel. Ranger didn't hit the accelerator. Ranger didn't tear anything up. Ranger used the only loud voice available. Then the truck rolled, slow, small, just enough to look dramatic if you wanted drama. Lang leaned closer. Nina's face tightened. Mia paused the frame where Ranger's head turned toward the bay door, as if calling the firefighters to follow. "See this?" Mia said softly. "That's not a dog trying to escape. That's a dog trying to lead." Tom let out a low breath. "Damn." Nina swallowed. "But the report was wrong," Lang said, voice flat. Not angry, but final. Ethan didn't move. His heart thudded hard against his ribs, not with victory, but with something heavier. Relief that arrived late always carried a shadow of what it cost to get there. Lang turned to Nina. "Why didn't we check this first?" Nina's mouth opened, then shut. Her eyes flicked to Ethan. A flash of shame crossed her face, quick and unprotected. "I thought I was preventing harm," Nina said, quieter now. Lang nodded once. "And you caused it." Silence filled the room. The kind of silence that demanded accountability, not comfort. Lang turned to Ethan. "Your dog is being held?" "Yes," Ethan said. His voice almost broke. He forced it steady. He went for help. He did his job. Lang's expression didn't soften much, but something in his gaze shifted. Respect, maybe. Or regret. "We will correct this," Lang said. Immediately. Ethan's throat tightened. "Today?" Lang held his eyes. "Now." Ethan looked at the screen one more time. At Ranger frozen mid-alert, vest bright under station lights. He felt the sting behind his eyes and hated it. He hated how close he was to losing control. Tom's hand touched Ethan's shoulder, steadying him the way Ranger usually did. As they walked back toward the lobby, voices rose outside. A crowd had gathered, larger than before. People wanted a story. They wanted someone to blame. They wanted someone to praise. Ethan didn't want any of it. He only wanted one thing. A black and tan shadow at his side again, amber eyes watching the world with quiet intelligence, reminding him that sometimes the bravest thing wasn't fighting. Sometimes it was refusing to let the truth be buried under noise. The little red truck. Morning in Milwaukee arrived like a thin apology. The wind eased, but the cold stayed. settled into sidewalks and bones, and the sky remained a pale, stubborn gray. Ethan Walker stood near the station entrance, navy winter coat zipped high, red and black flannel peeking at the collar. Faded jeans, brown low-cut leather boots. The same outfit, the same quiet armor. He kept his hands still at his sides, because if he let them shake, the whole world would mistake that for weakness, or anger, or guilt. People loved misreading things. Tom Harris stayed half a step behind him, steady as a wall. Tom didn't talk much. When he did, it was like he was placing a hand on your shoulder without asking permission. "Breathe," Tom said. Ethan breathed. The air hurt going in. It hurt going out. None of that mattered. The lobby doors opened. Captain Robert Lang emerged first, tall and composed. Gray threaded through his hair, his face set with the kind of seriousness that didn't look for applause. Officer Nina Caldwell followed, chin lifted, but her eyes were different now, less rigid, less certain. She looked like someone who had slept poorly and deserved it. Then Ranger appeared, black and tan German shepherd, ears upright, amber eyes steady. The black service dog vest sat across his shoulders, the white patch plain and blunt. Service dog, do not pet. Ranger walked with calm precision, not pulled, not dragged, not coaxed, just released. The leash in Lang's hand was loose, more symbol than restraint. Ethan's chest tightened so suddenly he almost laughed at himself. He had faced real danger in places people put on maps in war rooms. He had learned to swallow pain, swallow fear, swallow grief until it became a habit. And still, seeing his dog step into view hit him harder than any of that. Ranger stopped in front of Ethan, close enough that Ethan could feel warmth through cold air. Ranger didn't jump, didn't whine, didn't perform relief for the cameras gathering outside. Ranger simply looked up, eyes amber and quiet, and waited. Ethan lowered himself into a crouch. His left knee protested, sharp and immediate. He breathed through it like he always did. He rested one hand on Ranger's chest, steady, and for a moment he couldn't speak. "I'm sorry," Ethan said at last, voice low. "I thought they would listen." Ranger's nose touched Ethan's glove, soft as a punctuation mark. A single exhale. No blame, no drama, only presence. Tom looked away as if giving them privacy. Ethan appreciated that more than he could say. Captain Lang cleared his throat. "Mr. Walker," he said, "this will be addressed properly." Outside, the crowd had grown. Not massive, but loud enough. People with phones. People with opinions. People with that hungry look, like they had come to consume a story, not understand one. Captain Lang stepped toward the front doors. "We're doing this now," he said. They moved outside into the brittle daylight. Microphones were already set up. A local reporter with a thick scarf adjusted her camera angle. Her name was Rebecca Sloan, late 30s, sharp features, eyes quick and restless. She had the posture of someone who could turn a sentence into a headline before it finished. "This is the dog?" Rebecca called, as if Ranger could answer. Ranger stood at Ethan's left side, perfectly still, service vest visible. Ethan kept one hand lightly on the leash, not because Ranger needed control, but because Ethan needed something real to hold. Frank Delaney arrived in a slow shuffle, wrapped in a heavy coat, cheeks still pale from the cold he'd nearly lost to. He looked older than he had yesterday, like the river had taken a year from him and then returned it, crumpled. But his eyes were clear. He carried a small paper bag with both hands, as if the contents mattered more than it should. Captain Lang faced the cameras. He didn't smile. He didn't posture. He spoke the way people speak when they know they can't undo what they've done. "Yesterday," he said, "this department moved too fast. We acted on assumptions. We did not verify the full facts before taking action." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Some wanted a fight. Some wanted a confession. Captain Lang gave them the second. "We detained Mr. Ethan Walker," Lang continued, "and we held his service dog Ranger based on an incorrect interpretation of events." Officer Nina Caldwell stepped up beside him. Her shoulders were square, but her jaw tightened like she was swallowing something bitter. "I was wrong," Nina said, voice steady but quieter than usual. "I believed I was preventing harm. I did not review the footage before escalating. I apologize to Mr. Walker. And I apologize for treating Ranger like a threat when he was trying to help." Ethan didn't react for the cameras. He didn't nod or forgive on command. Forgiveness wasn't a performance. It was a process, and he didn't owe strangers the ending they wanted. Frank took a small step forward, trembling slightly. "That dog saved my life," he said, and the truth in his voice cut through the noise better than any speech. "I slipped near the drain. I couldn't get out. If Ranger hadn't gone for help, I don't know if I'd be standing here." Rebecca Sloan lifted her microphone. "So what exactly happened with the truck?" Mia Thompson appeared near the edge of the group, holding a folder, her eyes alert. She wasn't in uniform, and that mattered. She looked like the kind of person who didn't seek attention but refused to let facts be ignored. Captain Lang answered. "The emergency response vehicle rolled a short distance because it was not properly secured." Ranger entered the open vehicle and repeatedly activated the horn to alert personnel. Footage confirms Ranger did not cause harm. Ranger caused attention. The crowd shifted, as if the story they came to watch had changed genres. One man scoffed. "It's just a dog." Ethan's eyes turned sharp for the first time that morning. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Sometimes," Ethan said, "the difference between just and enough is a heartbeat." Silence followed that, brief and clean. Frank opened the paper bag and pulled out a bright red toy fire truck. It was small, glossy, ridiculous against all the seriousness of the morning. "My grandson picked it," Frank said, voice rough with emotion. "He said fire trucks are for rescuing people. He said, 'That dog should have one.'" Ethan stared at the toy. A laugh caught in his chest and escaped before he could stop it. It sounded strange coming from him, like a door opening in a house that had been shut for years. Ranger tilted his head, ears still upright, eyes steady. He looked at the toy, then at Ethan, as if evaluating whether this was another job. Ethan shook his head slightly. "He doesn't even play much," Ethan said, almost embarrassed. Frank smiled. "Maybe he will now." Captain Lang spoke again, formal, measured. "For courage, compassion, and decisive action that saved a life, we recognize Ranger today." No medals, no theatrics, just words spoken in daylight where everyone could hear. Nina stepped closer to Ethan. Her voice dropped so only he could hear. "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time it wasn't for the crowd. Ethan looked at her. He saw the fatigue in her eyes. He saw the cost of being wrong in public. He didn't soften completely, but he didn't harden either. "Next time," he said quietly, "check first." Nina nodded once. "I will." Later, when the microphones were gone and the crowd had dissolved into smaller pieces of gossip, Ethan walked back toward the Riverwalk with Ranger at his side. The wind was still there, but it felt less cruel. Or maybe Ethan was simply less hollow. He stopped near the spot where Frank had been trapped. The snow had filled in the marks, trying to erase the story. Ethan looked down at the river's thin ice and thought of how easy it was to fall through something that looked solid. How easy it was to trust a surface that didn't deserve trust. He looked down at Ranger instead. Ranger's amber eyes met his, calm and unwavering. Ethan's grip tightened lightly on the leash. Not control. Connection. "No more disappearing," Ethan said, barely above a whisper. Ranger stood close, service vest bright against the gray world, as if answering with the only vow that mattered. They walked on, and this time, Ethan didn't feel like a shadow. He felt like a man who had been misunderstood, found again, and decided to keep walking anyway. Sometimes a miracle does not arrive with thunder or bright light. Sometimes it arrives on 4 quiet paws, in the exact moment a life is slipping away. Faith is not only what people say in church. Faith is what a person chooses on an ordinary day. To pause, to listen, to check the truth before judging, to believe that God can use the smallest soul to do the biggest good. Ethan thought he had to carry everything alone, but God placed Ranger beside him, not to make life easier, but to make life clearer. Because in daily life, we all stand at our own river's edge. A hard phone call, a sick parent, a lonely neighbor, a misunderstanding that spreads fast. And the choice is always the same. React with anger or respond with wisdom. Judge quickly or slow down and seek the truth. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below and tell us about a time you saw kindness show up when you least expected it. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next story. God bless you, and may the Lord watch over you and your family.